Welcome to the Unlist. Today we are doing another winter themed video, another proper Unlist video where I unlist several fragrances for you in no particular order, mind you. And this is going to be about fragrances that are not necessarily meant for cold weather, but just so happen to be good in the cold. It's an inversion of the concept I started last year where I made a video about fragrances that are really good in hot weather that people wouldn't really think to wear in the summer. So I'm flipping that script around, and now we're talking about fragrances that might appear to be better for hotter months, but are actually quite nice in the cold. So let's get started. Top of my head, one of the things I wore recently, which is why I know, the celebration of January, which I made a video about, where I'm focusing a bit more on my Chanel collection. I wore the Allure Homme Edition Blanche, and it was on a very cold day. It was in the low 40s, Fahrenheit 40s, by the way, not Celsius, and it worked very well. You wouldn't think so, being that it's a fragrance with a very prominent lemon note in it. People like to liken this fragrance to like lemon meringue or to a lemon drop, but you know, the sandalwood, whether it's real or fake, I mean, it lists New Caledonian, so it could be real. That combination of the sandalwood with the vanilla in the base, and it has a bit of a classic Chanel powderiness to it as well that actually works surprisingly well in the colder months. Now, to be sure, I am talking about the Allure Homme Edition Blanche Eau de Parfum, released in 2014. The older version of this fragrance, when it was first issued as the Eau de Toilette Concentré, I can't really speak on that version of the fragrance. I only know what I wear in the situations where I have worn it. I've only really sampled that fragrance, never taken it out for a drive, as it were. So if you want to take your older bottles of the Allure Homme Edition Blanche and wear it outside in the cold, then you can report back to me and tell me if your findings are similar to mine with the Eau de Parfum. Otherwise, I'm speaking just for the Eau de Parfum here. In a similar stroke to that, I'm also going to lump the Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme in there as well. Another fragrance that you might think would be better in the summer, because the original Allure Homme Sport is something of an Acqua di Gio competitor in a way. You know, Acqua di Gio, Pour Homme by Giorgio Armani, and then Allure Homme Sport, usually alongside Versace Pour Homme. Those three fragrances tend to compete in the same spaces, right? But the Eau Extreme version, which came out in 2012, is surprisingly good in the cold. Again, its top notes sort of make you think, okay, this is a fresh, citrus, fruity, bit of a bubblegum opening, not entirely like Invictus, but in a similar train of thought as Invictus by Paco Rabanne, but a little more refined, a little more mature, because Chanel doesn't really make, well, let's be blunt here. Chanel doesn't make fuckboy fragrances. They just don't, okay? They make big boy fragrances for mature men that have responsibility and know where they're going in life. So the closest you're going to get to a fuckboy fragrance from Chanel is probably going to be that Allure Homme Sport Eau Extreme. And it's really a coincidence that it even smells anything like something that you would label as party hardy, you know, all I want to do is have some fun. Sheryl Crow lyrics there. But it goes in a direction that kind of belies the top notes, actually, which is why it's good in the winter. You get that fresh bubblegummy shower gel, pop the collars, you know, kind of vibe in the opening. But then eventually that Chanel powderiness, the same powderiness that's in the Edition Blanche, that powderiness shows up alongside a kind of a nutty, toasty tonka bean. It's not as ooey gooey sweet and thick of a tonka bean as you might think. It still has a bit of the sweetness there. There's a tiny bit of ethyl maltol present in this fragrance, but the tonka is rendered much drier, which is another thing Chanel doesn't really do, really heavily syrupy fragrances. Like Chanel's sweetest fragrances are in contrast much drier than anything else you could call sweet in the market. Like they're very, very sweetest fragrances, including stuff like the various cocoa flankers and the Bleu de Chanel Eau de Parfum, by far the sweetest of the trio, is still, compared to other fragrances, not that sweet. And thus the Allure Sport Eau Extreme is likewise sweet enough that it pushes the agenda it's trying to push. But that powderiness, that dry nuttiness in the base, it also contrasts that agenda with a bit of refinement and maturity. Makes it, makes it one hell of a thing to wear out in the cold, let me tell you, all right? You'd be surprised how good the stuff smells on a cold, chilly day when you're out in it walking around. So the Allure Edition Blanche Eau de Parfum alongside the Allure Sport Eau Extreme, lumping together, Extreme, whichever, lumping those two together, they both work really well in the cold when you might not think they would. You might not think they would. Now, moving right along from there, another fragrance that actually works really well in the cold, but you wouldn't think so. Another more recent fragrance. It's not super modern. It's been out for a number of years now, but compared to the fragrances I typically talk about on this channel, it is relatively modern. And it is Acqua di Gio Absolute. Now, this is not my favorite Acqua di Gio by any meaning of the word. Do not get it twisted. I know that some people almost consider this the black sheep of the Acqua di Gio family, since it arguably smells the least like Acqua di Gio out of all of them. Whether we're talking the original Eau de Toilette, we're talking the discontinued Essenza, the discontinued Profumo, we're talking about Profondo, which I think is also now discontinued. They basically, they're just kind of cycling all of the old flankers out one by one and cycling in new ones. But if we're talking the whole line as it is, discontinued or in production, you know, Eau de Toilette, Essenza, Profumo, Profondo, Absolute, and then there's the Eau de Parfum and the Parfum, which the Eau de Parfum looks like it replaced Essenza, and the Parfum looks like it's replacing Profumo. So whether or not Absolute and Profondo have gone the way to Dodo, I don't know, but I don't see them anymore. They're not in the stores. So I have a tendency to believe that they are at least pulled from the U.S. market. May not be pulled from other countries, but in the U.S. they are done. It's this. It's, okay, we're done. However, if you can find a bottle on the gray market or from a discounter, wherever you get it, the Acqua di Gio Absolute is surprisingly good in the cold. It's very good in the cold. And I think maybe part of that has to do with the sweetened spice profile. It's a similar situation to the Allure Sport Eau Extreme, where you get the opening notes and you go, oh no, this is fruity, this is bubblegum, this is aquatic, right? That's what you think when you first smell it. Same thing with the Acqua di Gio Absolute. When Absolute opens up, you're like, oh no, here we go again. Strap in, we're going in for a ride down, you know, aquatic hellscape, right? That's what you think. Oh, it's another aquatic, here we go. But if you hold on to your hats like this, you just wait it out of it, then you're surprised to learn that about maybe 10, 15 minutes. You gotta have some patience, guys. When you're wearing fragrances, you can't have like the patience of a 5-year-old. You can't knee jerk. You have to wait it out, you know? Anything worth putting on your arm to smell to begin with, anything worth picking up the bottle and spraying is worth waiting for at least 10, 15 minutes. If you can't even do that, if you just go, and you go like that, I don't know what to tell you guys. I really don't. But just like with a good song, you want to get a few bars in before you criticize, or a good movie, you want to get at least 10, 15 minutes in, see how it starts off before you just go, oh, wait a minute, this actor's ugly, let me turn off, watch something else. You have to kind of let it build a bit. And I noticed that when you do that with the Acqua di Gio Absolute, you get a sort of spiced, slightly woody, but it's still going to have that aquatic base ultimately. It's still going to have the salty ambroxan style base. You're still going to have the transparent musks. This is not going to be the most heavy or opaque fragrance you could wear in the cold. So don't let me falsely convince you of this being some amazing winter banger. It's not. But if you take Absolute out in the cold, you will find that the very thin, I want to say almost shimmery, thin, shimmery veneer of spice and wood, that spice and wood veneer that lays over top of your typical aquatic base underneath, and then a little bit of the sweetness above from that, you know, ethyl maltol Invictus-y stuff. Those three elements combine to create this sweet, spicy, woody, but also transparent aura that kind of just goes back and forth. And unlike the other Acqua di Gio flankers that evaporate in the cold, like completely. I hate to say this is probably going to be a hot take for some of you, but even like the much celebrated Profumo tends to evaporate on my skin in the cold. Profumo, everyone goes, oh yeah, Profumo is the one you wear in the cold. Profumo is the cold one. I don't think so. Profumo is really good in a mature office or dressed up black tie setting, you know, room temperature guys. But if you are out in the cold, if you are wearing winter coats and scarves, Profumo is going to fail you. It's going to fail you. Absolute, on the other hand, becomes the dark horse champion, the surprise winner of the fight, the underdog that no one expected to knock out the champ. But that little bit of sweetness, that little bit of spice, helps it come through in the clutch. And maybe not save the day in the cold, but at least make the day a little more tolerable, right? Better than it would be if you wore something else or wore nothing at all. Now, next one up for fragrances that wear surprisingly well in the cold. I'm going to talk about a little thing that is sort of not so known to a lot of people. I mean, it's known to the collectors and it's known to the vintage guys. It's the first really older fragrance I'm going to mention here, but it's a fragrance by Moschino called Uomo with 2 question marks facing opposite directions, like upside down, right side up. People also call this a lemon fragrance because the top note is limoncello, and it's an Italian designer, and if you're familiar with Italian food and drink, limoncello is a lemon liquor. Okay, so it has this limoncello top note, which basically smells like sweet lemon. So again, it's almost like a lemon head candy or a lemon drop, something along those lines, right? Or little sliced gummy lemon wedges that are like crusted sugar on top. That's what you get. And when you spray it on, you think, okay, this is going to be the gist of the fragrance. It's going to be the sweet lemon. So you're going to relegate it to what? Summertime. You're going to relegate it to spring. But there is a very strong ambery presence in the base that comes out later in the fragrance's wear, and it really takes you by surprise. You don't expect it. And I think maybe that's why the question mark is there, because the whole idea, this fragrance tries to subvert expectations. The whole Uomo with a question mark is really because it's unisex. Honestly, it's a very unisex fragrance. So they say Uomo with a question mark because they're saying, well, is this really for a man? Can't a woman wear this too? The answer is yes. Yes, you can. I mean, anybody can wear anything, but if you're trying to follow society norms, you know, you want to try and stay within the lines, you don't want to color over the lines, then yeah, you mind your P's and mind your Q's. But in this case, the Uomo Moschino with the question mark is not only unisex, but it is also surprisingly good in the cold. Once you get through that lemon drop note, the limoncello note, then you move through kumquat. Once you're through the kumquat, which kind of gives you a bit of a weird tropical fruity, it's a note you don't see very much. I've seen kumquat turn up a handful of times in that fragrance, and then a fragrance from 2014 that Calvin Klein made called Reveal. Yeah, Calvin Klein Reveal Men had a kumquat note in that as well. Kind of interesting, weird sort of turn of events. But in the Uomo, the kumquat kind of bridges between the lemon and the amber. So once you get through that fruitiness, you're into this really earthy, gritty, sort of dry, spiced amber. It is not a animalic amber. It's not a Middle Eastern amber. It is definitely more of an M7 or Gucci Pour Homme 2002 style of amber, where it's that rich tilled earth amber, that really dry, pasty stuff. You know, it's not the gummy amber that you get from things like Grand Soir by MFK. It's not a gummy amber, and it's not your old school powdery grandma's amber either. It's not your Dana Taboo. And I love Taboo, okay, I love it, but I'm just saying it's not that either. It is a very particular style of dry, earthy, almost crumbly. Feels crumbly, actually, crumbly amber. And that is in the base of the Uomo Machino. And that right there makes it carry particularly well. Once again, summery opening, summertime opening, lemon opening, earthy, cold weather friendly, dry, warm base note that makes this resonate in the cold. So, I'm going to keep this a bit of a shorter video. I don't want to go too far, so I will name one more. So we will have a total of 4 things, and then you can go off and play with your fragrances. You know, do what I do. Build little Lego towers out of them or whatever. This last one is going to be another older fragrance that, again, people are like, oh, that's more of something you wear in spring or fall or whatever. But no, surprisingly, it works very well in the winter. And I think I know why. But first, let's talk about it. 1947. So we're going way back here. We're getting in the Wayback Machine. Yeah. 1947, Visconti di Madrone, which would be renamed Victor for Anglophone markets, again, UK, US, Australia, would release a fragrance called Acqua di Silva. I've mentioned this fragrance in other videos. I have also recommended it as a good summer fragrance in these other videos. But lo and behold, it's also really good in the winter. And you know why? I'll give you guys one guess. The pine. The pine works really, really well in the wintertime, because when you are in the wintertime and most of your trees, if you're living in a part of the world where you have dioecious trees that have leaves, they're all bald. Leaves are gone. But the pine trees, the firs, the spruces, they still have their needles because they're evergreen, right? So likewise, this fragrance, you know, here I'm rolling it all together for you, putting it in a bow. This fragrance is an evergreen. You can wear it in the summer, you can wear it in the winter, you can wear it in the spring, you can wear it in the fall. But different parts of it will come out in different times of the year. Summertime, you're going to get the bergamot, you're going to get the lemon, you're going to get the lavender and the vetiver. In the wintertime, you're going to get the pine. Mostly you're going to get that pine, the dry, again with the dry, roasty, toasty, nutty tonka because of the fougere facets and the oak moss. The pine and the oak moss are going to come out the most in the wintertime. Just how the nose works, guys. I don't make up these rules. I just tell them to you. So give that fragrance a shot. Yes, it says cologne, so you figure out it's going to be light because it's cologne. But I'm telling you, you wear Acqua di Silva in the cold, you will not be disappointed. Now, I don't know about the other shaving products that come along. It has an aftershave and some other things too. I can't speak on those. I can only speak on the actual cologne. And even then I'm talking about the vintage bottles. So either you get the spray bottle, which is a mid-vintage, with the integrated green plastic sprayer, or you go even further back and you get the old splash bottle that says Victor on the bottom with the little wreath on it and unscrews the cap. Either of those will work. You don't have to get the oldest ones, but if you get that mid-vintage and back, then you will get the results that I'm telling you about. And there you have it, guys. That is my fragrances that don't really seem winter friendly, but are actually really good in the winter. Hope you enjoyed this unlisted video. Catch you next time.